She stormed into the hospital hallway like she owned the place, waving her phone in the air. "You can't just use that machine without HOA clearance," she yelled at the nurse. Everyone froze. My daughter was inside the ICU, barely breathing. Tubes, monitors, everything connected. And this woman, Karen, was shouting about neighborhood regulations. I tried to stay calm, but when she yanked the power plug from the humidifier beside the bed, the alarms went off. My wife screamed, "She's unplugging the oxygen." Karen looked right at me and said, "You people think you can do whatever you want in my neighborhood hospital?" The nurse ran to reconnect the device, panic spreading through the room. I stepped forward. "Ma'am, this is a hospital. My child's fighting for her life." She crossed her arms. "Then maybe follow HOA medical safety codes." The doctor rushed in furious. "Who touched the equipment?" Karen didn't even blink. "I did. That machine violates HOA noise regulations." The doctor stared at her like she'd lost her mind. "Ma'am, this isn't your property. This is a hospital ICU." She sneered. "I'm the president of the HOA. Everything in this district falls under my supervision." My wife was shaking, crying, holding our daughter's hand. Then, as if to prove her power, Karen pointed to the door and said, "If you don't remove that machine, I'll have security throw you all out." That's when I said it, quietly but firm. "You touch that plug again, and I'll have you arrested." She laughed. "Arrested? For doing my job?" The doctor's voice turned cold. "No, for interfering with medical equipment. During surgery prep." He pulled out his phone and said, "I'm calling the police right now." Karen's smile faded, but she still stood tall. And that's when she made the biggest mistake of her life. She walked straight into the ICU and reached for another cable. The second she touched that cable, every monitor in the room started screaming. My daughter's oxygen level dropped to 60. Nurses rushed in, shouting for help. Karen froze, realizing what she'd done. But instead of stepping back, she started yelling again. "It's not my fault. This setup is illegal." The doctor shoved past her, reattaching wires with shaking hands. "You just endangered a child's life," he barked. But Karen kept rambling about property codes and neighborhood permits. It didn't even sound human anymore, just pure arrogance wrapped in panic. Security burst through the door and the doctor pointed straight at her. "Detain her now." Karen stepped back, eyes wide, but still tried to act powerful. "Don't touch me." "I have rights," she screamed, waving her HOA badge like it meant something here. The guard grabbed her wrist, and she yanked away so hard the badge flew across the floor. I picked it up and looked at it. It wasn't even official. Just a laminated piece of paper that said President, Maplewood HOA, fake seal, fake title. Everything about her was fake. The doctor was still checking on my daughter, adjusting the oxygen flow. I could see the tears in his eyes when the numbers slowly started to rise again. "She's stabilizing," he whispered. My wife collapsed into my arms, shaking uncontrollably. Karen, even in that chaos, muttered, "You people don't belong here. The HOA will have your house taken down." Her voice trembled now, no longer strong, more desperate. The cop who just arrived turned toward her. "Ma'am, you tampered with hospital equipment? That's a felony." She laughed weakly. "You don't know who I am." I stepped forward, meeting her eyes for the first time without fear. "Actually, I do. You're the woman who just tried to stop my child's surgery." I paused, letting the silence stretch. "And you have no idea who you just messed with." The officer glanced at me. "Sir, do you want to press charges?" I looked down at my daughter, still breathing, still fighting, and said quietly, "Not yet. But she's about to learn why you don't threaten a father like me." Karen was still arguing when they escorted her to the waiting area. "You'll regret this. I'll sue this hospital," she shouted, twisting against the officer's grip. The doctor walked out behind me, whispering, "She's lucky your daughter's still alive." My wife sat in silence, staring through the glass at our little girl who was now breathing slowly, her chest rising and falling under the warm lights. I took a deep breath and turned to the officer. "I need to file a full report," I said. He nodded and led me to a small office near the front desk. As he started writing, Karen's voice echoed from down the hall. "I have friends in the city council." "You'll lose everything." I looked up at the officer and asked, "Do you know if this woman's done this before?" He hesitated. "Honestly, and yes. She's filed over 50 complaints this year. Tried shutting down a veterans clinic last month for noise violations. My jaw tightened. I reached into my jacket pocket and slid a small black folder across the table. The officer opened it and froze. "You're Agent Miles Turner?" I nodded slowly. "Federal Inspector for Public Health and Safety. I was here as a parent today, but now it's official." His eyes widened. "Sir, this changes everything." Through the glass window, I saw Karen pacing, shouting into her phone. "Get the mayor on the line! I want this hospital fined." She still didn't realize who she was messing with. The officer leaned closer. "You want us to book her?" I shook my head. "Not yet. I want to know who's been giving her fake authority. That HOA badge isn't real, and she's using it to intimidate hospitals." Just then, the doctor rushed in again. "Sir, the CCTV footage. It shows her pulling the plug deliberately." I clenched my fists. My wife looked at me terrified. Karen saw us watching her from across the hallway and smirked. "You can't touch me," she mouthed. I whispered back, "Watch me." That's when my phone buzzed, a call from a restricted number. I stepped aside and answered quietly. "Turner," a serious voice replied. "Agent, we've been tracking her for months. She's connected to a fraud ring posing as HOA authorities." My eyes darted toward Karen. She was still shouting at the nurse. I whispered, "Then I guess you found your ringleader." Karen's tone shifted when she saw 2 more officers walk in. This time, they weren't local police. Their jackets had federal patches. One of them looked directly at me and gave a subtle nod. Karen's confidence cracked for the first time. "Who are they?" she asked, her voice trembling. The taller agent replied calmly, "Federal Property and Health Authority. We've been waiting for you, Ms. Campbell." Her face went pale. "There must be some mistake," she stammered, clutching her fake badge. "I'm the HOA president." The agent tilted his head. "No, you're a fraud who's been posing as one, extorting families, shutting down clinics, and now almost killing a child." She tried to back away, but 2 agents closed in. "You have no right to," she started, but they cut her off. "We have every right. You crossed federal lines the moment you touched hospital equipment." The officer beside me whispered, "You really called them in?" I nodded. They were already watching her. "I just confirmed the location." My wife looked stunned. "You knew?" I turned to her gently. "I didn't want to scare you. I've been undercover for months. Karen wasn't just an HOA bully. She's been targeting vulnerable families for property takeovers." Karen screamed as they placed cuffs on her wrists. "You can't arrest me. I own this neighborhood." The lead agent looked at her and said coldly, "You don't even own your name anymore." "Miss Campbell, it's all evidence now." The crowd in the hallway began to gather. Nurses, patients, even the hospital security. People started whispering, realizing who she really was. One woman muttered, "She shut down my son's therapy center last year." Another said, "That's the same Karen who threatened my mom for parking outside her own house." Karen tried to look around for help, but no one moved. Not this time. The lead agent turned to me. "Agent Turner, thank you for keeping calm. Your daughter's safe now. We'll handle the rest." I nodded, but didn't take my eyes off Karen. She glared back at me, eyes full of hate and fear. "You think this is over?" she hissed. I leaned closer and whispered, "It is for you." As they led her away, she shouted one last thing, "You'll regret this." But this time, nobody listened. The doctor put a hand on my shoulder. "You just saved more than your daughter today." And yet, as Karen disappeared through the hallway, something inside me said this wasn't the end. There was something bigger, something she hadn't said yet. That night, when the hospital finally quieted down, I sat beside my daughter's bed, listening to the steady rhythm of her breathing. My wife had fallen asleep in the chair next to her, her hand still holding our child's tiny fingers. For the first time in hours, the room felt calm, but my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. The lead agent had sent me a message. "We checked her car. You need to see this." I stepped out into the dim hallway and met the agents in the parking lot. Karen's SUV was still there, tinted windows, spotless paint, but something about it felt wrong. One agent opened the trunk and my heart sank. Inside were folders, stacks of documents with forged HOA seals, lists of neighborhood names, and photos. Photos of families, veterans, immigrants, single parents, all of them marked with red ink. Remove, replace, fine. She had been running a full-blown scam, targeting anyone she thought couldn't fight back. But what froze me wasn't the names, it was one file with my address on it. The folder read, Miles Turner, watch, suspected undercover. I stared at it, my stomach turning cold. She knew. Even before the hospital incident, she had found out who I was. I opened the file further. Inside was a small USB drive. One of the agents plugged it into a laptop inside their vehicle. The screen lit up, showing security footage. Karen meeting a man in a dark suit outside a city council building. Who's that? I asked. The agent paused the video, zooming in. City housing director. Looks like she wasn't acting alone. My fist clenched. She's connected to officials? The agent nodded grimly. And we think she's part of a larger property acquisition scheme, forcing people out. Buying cheap, reselling through shell companies. I ran a hand over my face. So this isn't just HOA harassment? No, the agent said quietly. It's organized crime. Before I could respond, the hospital doors burst open. A nurse came running out, breathless. Sir, you need to come back now. Something's happening in your daughter's room. I sprinted down the hall, my heart pounding harder than ever. When I reached the ICU, the monitors were flashing red again. My wife was crying, shouting for help. It just started. Everything went off. The doctor was already at the bedside, adjusting the machines, but then he looked up at me, confused. Someone tampered with the system again. My blood ran cold. What do you mean again? He pointed at the unplugged line near the floor, taped with a small note that read, You can't save everyone, agent. And at that moment I knew Karen wasn't working alone, and whoever was behind this wasn't finished yet. My knees went weak when I saw that note. It wasn't Karen's handwriting, too neat, too calculated. My wife looked at me, terrified. Miles, what does that mean? She whispered. I didn't answer. My eyes were fixed on the cord, the small handwriting, the cold reminder that someone else was still out there watching us. The doctor managed to stabilize our daughter again, but he looked shaken. This wasn't a random unplug, he muttered. The tape. It was cleanly cut and reattached. Whoever did this knew exactly what they were doing. I stepped into the hallway and called the lead agent. Seal the building. Now, we've got someone inside. Within seconds, 2 more agents stormed in, scanning every corridor, every exit. The hospital lights flickered once, twice, and then everything went dark. Backup power kicked in, but it was too late. Whoever was behind this had already slipped through the cracks. When the lights came back on, there was movement near the side exit. I ran, my heart pounding. A man in a dark jacket was walking fast toward the parking lot. Head down, phone pressed to his ear. Stop right there, I shouted. He didn't even flinch, just kept walking faster. I grabbed his arm and spun him around. For a second I froze. I knew that face. It was the same man from the video, the city housing director. His eyes widened when he saw me. Agent Turner, I didn't expect you to still be here. His voice was calm, too calm. I pushed him against the wall. You planted that note? He smirked. You think you've stopped anything? Karen was just the front. The real project has already started. What project? I demanded. He leaned closer and whispered, Operation Reclaim. We buy out neighborhoods using fear. And you just made us famous. I gritted my teeth. You almost killed my daughter. He smiled faintly. Collateral damage. That's when one of the agents grabbed him and slammed him into the patrol car. You're done, I said quietly. Every name, every file, you're all going down. But just as they were about to cuff him, his phone rang. The screen lit up with one word that made my stomach twist. Director. He looked at me and smiled again. You're too late. The phone stopped ringing, and a second later, alarms blared through the hospital. One of the agents shouted, There's a fire in the power room. I turned toward the window and saw smoke rising from the lower floor. Exactly below the ICU, my wife's scream cut through the chaos. Miles, our daughter! And in that split second, I realized they weren't trying to escape. They were trying to erase everything. The hallways filled with smoke as alarms wailed and red lights blinked across the hospital. Nurses shouted for evacuations. Doctors wheeled patients toward the stairwell, and chaos swallowed everything. I ran back toward the ICU, pushing against the flood of people rushing the other way. Sir, it's not safe. A nurse yelled, but I didn't stop. My wife was inside. My daughter was inside. When I reached the room, flames were licking up from the floor vents. The backup generator had exploded. My wife was trying to pull the bed's wheels free, but the cords were tangled. I grabbed the oxygen tank and yanked the wires loose, shouting, "We have to move now!" The doctor appeared behind us, coughing through the smoke, helping push the bed toward the hallway. We made it to the stairwell just as a ceiling panel crashed down, blocking the path behind us. My wife screamed, but we kept moving, one step at a time, the alarms echoing off the concrete walls. I didn't even realize I was crying until the cold air hit my face outside. Firefighters rushed in seconds later. Agents pulled us to safety, wrapping us in blankets. My daughter was breathing, weak but steady. The doctor nodded at me. "She's going to make it." I looked back at the burning building, the flames reflecting in the windows. One of the agents walked up, phone in hand. "We traced the last call," he said. "The man you caught wasn't the head. The one behind all of this, he's already left the state." I exhaled slowly, my jaw tight. "Then we find him." The agent hesitated. "Sir, after tonight you've done more than enough." I looked at my daughter, tiny, fragile, alive, and shook my head. "No, I've only just started." As the sirens faded into the distance, I noticed something glinting near the curb. Karen's fake HOA badge, half melted from the heat. I picked it up, staring at the blackened plastic. My wife came closer and whispered, "It's over, right?" I looked down at the badge, then back at the rising smoke. "For her, yes. But not for the people she hurt. Not until they all get their homes back." The agent placed a hand on my shoulder. "We'll rebuild it, Agent Turner. Justice always leaves a mark." I slipped the charred badge into my pocket. "Then let's make sure this one burns bright enough for everyone to see." And as the sun rose over the smoking hospital, I held my daughter close and whispered, the words that carried through the morning air. "No one, no system, no fake authority will ever touch my family again." And subscribe my YouTube channel for more stories.